Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar entitled Partnering with Purpose, Building Partnerships to Drive Equitable Registered Apprenticeships. My name is Joshua Johnson, and I'm a director with JFF, leading our National Innovation Hub for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility in Registered Apprenticeship. Our goal is twofold: to support employers as they establish or achieve their DEI goals utilizing the Registered Apprenticeship model, and to ensure that we are providing resources and access to the promise of apprenticeship to the underrepresented and disenfranchised populations across our country, because we know it takes a village to create a diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible registered apprenticeship program. One of the key components of successful registered apprenticeship programs are partnerships. Partnerships are the key to building well-run apprenticeships that prepare workers of all ages for rewarding careers. For a program to succeed, many stakeholders must work together, from the employers who hire apprentices all the way up to the state apprenticeship systems and everyone in between. Many of you have joined today with these questions in mind. Who do I connect with? How do I convince another organization to partner with me? Who does what? And most importantly, how do I know if this partnership is really working? Well, our goal today is that you'll leave with promising practices for building these partnerships that will take your new or existing registered apprenticeship programs to the next level in supporting and creating equitable program design, recruitment, and retention. Today, we'll be joined by three of our great partners in the DEI Innovation Hub. We have the Center for Minority Serving Institutions at Rutgers, we have Apprenticeship Carolina, and we have the Institute for Community Inclusion at UMass. These partners bring years of knowledge and strategy in building successful and sustainable partnerships, and they are excited to discuss the steps they took to build strong relationships and partnerships with fellow stakeholders and the factors that make their partnerships succeed. As you listen today, please share your questions or comments in the chat or on the Padlet throughout the whole webinar session. I thank you again for joining us, and now I turn it over to a very good friend of mine, Mary Beth Gassman from the Center for Minority Serving Institutions at Rutgers.
Welcome, everyone. We are really excited to have you with us today for our webinar, which is called Registered Apprenticeship Partnerships at Minority Serving Institutions, or MSIs. My name is Mary Beth Gassman, and I am a professor at Rutgers University, and I also am honored to be the executive director of the Rutgers Center for Minority Serving Institutions, and we are a partner with Jobs for the Future. And we're very excited to have an amazing panel today to talk about partnerships. And our panel includes Alice Ginsberg, who is a senior research specialist at Rutgers University, Cindy Paz, who's program manager for the Community Health Worker Initiative at the University of Houston, Sam Choi, who is associate professor in the Department of Social Work at Alabama A&M University, and just a wonderful, wonderful panel. And I'll also try to contribute a little bit myself. So we are going to start off with some questions and just have a great conversation. And then near the end, we're going to provide you with some really concrete ideas for fostering the best partnerships when it comes to registered apprenticeship. So I will start off with a couple questions for Sam and Cindy. And the first question is, can you briefly describe the registered apprenticeship program that you have led at your institution and tell us about partners that you work with in order to make the program successful? And Sam, you want to begin?
All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm Sam Choi, and I'm associate professor at AAMU. And our project, Opioid Impacted Family Training Program, is funded by the Health Resources and Services Administration. Our program intended to improve workforce need in Alabama, where high rates of opioid impacted families, but lack of master-level social workers who provide treatment to those families, especially in rural areas. So our trainees are students who entered in master's program in social work and already have their bachelor's degree. So we are the sponsor and educator, And we provide two levels of training. Pre-apprenticeship training involved a specialized class and semester of experiential field education. Level 2 training is apprenticeship training where they are hired by community mental health agencies as a case managers. So as I mentioned it, we are the sponsor and educator and community agencies are our partners. Um, the partnership with mental health community agencies has been a key to success for us. We are able to being flexible and listen to what field needed and accommodate our pre-apprenticeship training helped a lot to strengthening our partnership. For example, we adjusted our pre-apprenticeship training to meet the immediate needs for our employers, which is mental health agencies. While we are developing our registered apprenticeship, we learned that there is a need for case management certification so that the employer can build student services the day one they are hired. So we collaborate with Alabama Department of Mental Health, and they were able to train our students and provide a certification of case management before they opt for the apprenticeship. Also, the Alabama Department of Mental Health has been a great support to spread out our work in statewide agencies. So our partnership with community mental health agencies and Alabama Department of Mental Health has been our key to success for our funded program to work with opioid impacted families.
Thank you so much. I just think that this is such a model RA program and really appreciate the way that it engages the community so fully. So thank you. Cindy, how about you?
Hi, thank you for having me here. So I manage a 2-year program for community health workers at Houston in the University of Houston. Community health workers are frontline public health workers that work as advocates for the community that they live in. Most CHWs come from marginalized communities, and during their work, CHWs focus on building capacity and creating pathways for individuals of those communities to access resources. In developing our program, we took the feedback from previous CHW students and employers in order to make the program a good point of entry to employment for our apprentices. We had gathered feedback around what were the training needs, what were the gaps in education that employers were seeing in the community health workers, and also what other support would be useful to the community health worker, since most of their work is out in the field. They're typically not office-based. And so we used all that feedback to create our 2-year program that starts with the certification course and then adds on continuing education training that is focused on resource matching, service coordination, mental health, and other needs that community health workers were seeing in their communities. To ensure its viability, we worked closely with the Texas Workforce Commission to find financial incentives for employers to hire the apprentices. And we also worked directly with several of the employers, most of whom are nonprofits or federally qualified health centers. So to find other funding or grant opportunities so they could also hire our apprentices and provide them with long-term employment.
Wow. Again, I think the thing that impresses me the most about these programs is just how much work goes into establishing all of those relationships so that things can work as smoothly as possible. And I also like that different entities are talking to each other, because sometimes I feel like folks are operating in their own worlds and not having those conversations. So just really, really great work. So another question for Sam and Cindy is, I know you know this, but minority serving institutions, or MSIs, are known for being community centered, where students come from the local community often and plan to stay and work in that community upon graduation, which is so important. So I'm kind of wondering if you can talk for a bit about how do the partnerships in your registered apprenticeship program ultimately empower and enrich the larger community? And Sam, feel free to go.
Thank you. The, our project was funded by HRSA, and the ultimate goal will be empowering our community. Our project started to improve accessibility to treatment for opioid impacted families by providing highly trained social workers, and registered apprenticeship provide a vital role to training our students. So far, we have 38 students. Over 40 students completed level 1 training. 15 are in the level 1 training, and 8 students are in the level 2 training. Most of the students stay in their community after their graduation, and they also plan to stay in the community. So that will be they will be great asset to our community. But we also learned a lot from our first 3 years. There has been 3 issues that we found out that area that we need to work on as with the community partners. One is that there's a number of available community agencies is limited in our area. So there should be an advocate for that. And also a second one is there many non-profit agencies with limited financial resources are not able to get the registered apprenticeship benefits because they're limited financial resources. So that has been our second target area that we are advocating for. And third one is low wages for social workers compared to the other industries. At the beginning, we had some difficulties recruiting non-profit agencies due to their financial status. Usually the apprenticeship side get the financial benefit from states about tax credit, right? But the nonprofit agency will not apply for those tax credit. So, and also they face challenges to hire our apprentices at the required labor market wages that state set. So I mean, our project was trying to empowering those rural area agency, but there has been a challenges identified. So from the policy point of view, I mean, our registered apprenticeship project gave opportunity to work with the community agency to advocating those 3 issues at the state level. So we are trying to, collaborating with other agencies and work with the state and looking for the policy changes to incentivize hiring apprentices by state and some compensating wages to meet the labor market. I guess, that project started small, but I think we're looking at the bigger picture of empowering our community at this moment.
Yeah, it's always interesting when state policies or tend to impede upon progress, so it can be really frustrating. Cindy, how about you?
Yes. So our partnerships provide students with opportunities for economic mobility, which is very important just because a lot of our apprentices come from marginalized communities. They also come with low education backgrounds, or maybe haven't had steady employment. And so the apprenticeship provides them with a way to enter a professional field and to also begin working quickly, right? Which is important for them. Also, some of our apprentices do begin with us as U of H undergraduates. And so they work through the apprenticeship as they go through their undergraduate career, and then stay with us during their gap year. So the work of a community health worker is already centered in the community. The community health workers come in already with a deep understanding of the needs, of the values of the communities that they're serving. And most of them already have been active in either organizing their communities or already helping people navigate resources. So really all of the work and training that they go through is to be able to go back into their community and be advocates, be agents of change, as we like to call them. So that way they can provide their neighbors with health education, service coordination, outreach, and other positive engagement activities that promote social connections within their neighborhood. And so we really do focus on providing them with avenues to where they can stay in their community, but still also have some economic mobility, which is very complicated to do, especially when working in public health and in the nonprofit fields, just because there's not a lot of funding. So we're always looking for different financial incentives, whether it be through the Texas Workforce Commission or applying for grants that would be able to provide funding sources for community health workers.
Oh, thank you, and I'm glad that you're so thoughtful about sort of the life outcomes of students who participate in these programs. Is so important. Okay, so another question, and Alice, I'd love to hear a little thoughts from you if you have any here too. But I'll start off with Sam, and that is and also Cindy. So I'm not letting you off the hook, Cindy. What do you think are the best practices for creating registered apprenticeship partnerships? And how can other institutions of higher ed who want to create these partnerships apply for them? So just wondering what you think some best practices are. And Cindy, I'll start with you.
Yes. So when creating a registered apprenticeship, you really do have to understand the market that your apprentices will be working in. We asked ourselves a lot of questions while developing the apprenticeship, where we wanted to answer questions around what gaps in education or access the apprenticeship was closing, what were the needs of our employers, because we wanted our apprenticeship to be marketable to them. And then also how our RA will support apprentices when they are on the field, and what mentors we were selecting, how we were training them. I've come to learn that having good mentors is key to the success of a registered apprenticeship. The apprentices, especially the ones that we work with, do need a lot of support while they're on the field, especially if they don't have a lot of work experience. So we'll need to have mentors that can provide apprentices with peer support, a listening ear, to be able to better help them overcome whatever challenges they may be facing that can be a barrier to them actually remaining in the registered apprenticeship and finishing it. So I would suggest that you definitely, before starting, have some thought into how you're mentors and how you're training them so they can support apprentices.
Oh, I'm really glad that you mentioned mentoring, because it's very, very important. I mean, I don't know about all of you, but having a role model to help you think through things is always a good idea. Sam.
Yes. Well, our program is the first master level social work registered apprenticeship in our nation, and it's first in HBCU as well. So being a first means your ride won't be smooth, right? So we started our communication with Alabama Office of Apprenticeship in December, and established our first registered apprenticeship in next year, September, with one community partner, community agency partner. Now we have 12 agency partners, so it's a success story, but beginning was tough. I echo with Cindy about that you gotta research the market, map out your target agency, what they need, and you gotta able to research on that. But also you gotta learn the state requirement for the apprenticeship. Each state has different requirements, and we had some hurdles because our state required agency paid all the tuition. So students are debt free after they are completed their apprenticeship. So there's a pro and cons, but like each state has a different requirement. If you are starting your new one, then you gotta have able to have those conversation early possible. And also it is, I think, most important is that you know that it takes some time to understand each other, to create a establish apprenticeship. There's four entities: state, right, and your institution, and employers and employees. So those need to be reached out the same concept and same understanding about what apprenticeship is, how this is going to be operate in our state, in our institution. So knowing that it takes some time is give you some, room for the be patient, require that patient, but but it's worthy, because I think the higher education institution of a higher education already have a relationship with and networking with the community agencies. So the agents, institution already had those networking. They're also capable of providing the education and any necessary training, right? So the higher education is in good place to start their registered apprenticeship, especially the area that required like or value field education, hands-on experience, or work-based learning, things like that. Those fields are good fit with registered apprenticeship. And because as a institution, you will be sponsor and educator, and you'll be ensuring all those training there, either teachers or nursing or any other helping professionals that value those hands-on experience. I think they are in a good shape, good place to start their registered apprenticeship.
Thank you. Thank you. Patience is always really important,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want me to weigh in on that at all, Mary Beth?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when the Center for MSI, we did a landscape analysis of registered apprenticeships at all MSIs in the country. And one of the things that we found is that they really looked into their individual communities to see where new jobs were needed and where problems were not being addressed. And especially in cases like community healthcare and social work, there's generic training, but then there's culturally relevant training, which is where you're really going up against misconceptions about the people in your community and really trying to learn about them in terms of how they're being impacted by systemic issues around race and class and gender. And I think that MSIs in their registered apprenticeships are really trying to integrate a lot of that into what they're doing. So
Absolutely. Thank you, Alice. So another question I have, and I think you've touched a little bit on this, especially you, Sam, but what are some of the challenges that both of you have faced in sustaining these registered apprenticeship partnerships? And even more important, how do you overcome them? And I know patience is the key, but how do you overcome them? And Cindy, why don't you start us out?
Yes. So I'll talk a little bit more about financial obstacles, but one of the obstacles that we really hadn't actually prepared for ahead of time, and our apprenticeship was is one of like the only 2 community health worker apprenticeships in Texas as well. So we didn't have anyone else to really talk to because the other apprenticeship had what isn't around anymore. But we weren't ready. We quickly realized that we also needed to support the managers of the community health workers that were being hired by providing them with best practices around managing people that are on the field. And so the community health workers weren't coming into the office every day. And so it was a little, it was a learning curve for the managers to realize that they couldn't really control or manage the time the way that you would for, a typical office-based employee. And then another challenge was in ensuring that we prepared managers for sort of understanding what it is that the community health worker can actually do. Community health workers are quite popular right now in public health because they're able to quickly reach hard to reach populations. They have a deep understanding of their communities. They're quite they're culturally competent and things like that. but they also need a lot of support in their work, and so they still need a lot of training. They still need a lot of support in what resources maybe that they can refer people to. And so I think that was a bit of a learning curve for the manager, where managers expected community health workers to be able to just quickly reach people, quickly add numbers to the nonprofit services that they were offering, without understanding really what kind of support structure the community health worker would need in order to be successful. And then also another challenge is ensuring that there's adequate funding for the apprenticeships. And so especially since our work is so much in the nonprofit and public health sectors, which already doesn't have a lot of funding available. So we are always in the process of overcoming those challenges. We haven't quite overcome them just yet. It's required us to have a continuous and open communication with our employers about what the goals are of the RA. And to make sure that both the employer and the apprentice have good outcomes at the end, that the apprentice has skills that they'll be able to take onto another job if that's what they want, or that they're actually being able to get promoted within the organization that they're an apprentice in. And so we're constantly having open, honest communication with our employers, and then always looking for new funding opportunities or incentives. So some of the barriers around that has been that incentives aren't always steady within Texas. So we're constantly kind of needing to overcome that. And like Sam said, be very, very patient. We recently lost some funding incentives that were available to employers. And so some of the employers had to wait before hiring a community health worker, just because we've been able to really help our employers understand that when they're hiring a community health worker, they're hiring them for the long term, and that they're not just hiring them for this grant that they have, that they are really making a commitment to keep this person on board even after the grant funding has ended, and to ensure that they're including them in just their permanent budget.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Sam, what would you recommend in addition to patients in terms of challenges and how to overcome them?
Right. The funding is a major issue when we work with nonprofit agency, as Cindy indicated, and we are experiencing same thing. Once we establish the apprenticeships, then students are doing their job, they like it. But the continuation, sustainability of hiring those apprentices, that will be challenging for the nonprofit agency. And we are also looking for the funding opportunity, or as I said, we are trying to move that campaigning for the policy changes in state level. The challenges that I experienced was the turnover or leadership changes in community agencies, partnering agencies. We mentioned it, that concept of apprenticeship is new in our field. So it took some time to see that, let those leadership positions see the potentials of it, right? But adding to the COVID impacts in workforce area, when turnover and leadership changes happen in the agency, we had an occasion when we started the conversation from the beginning, like building a communication and contacting them. So again, I need to emphasize persistency and patience has been our virtue to overcome the challenges. And also, I think that as a project director, you gotta believe in the benefit of your program, and that really, gives some energies to negotiate all those challenges. And also, we found out that having a regular communication with apprenticeship site. Usually the students are, training apprentices are having their supervisors. And our coordinator is contacting the supervisor, ensure their training and they are meeting their competencies. But we also need communication with the leadership level or HR because there are like two different the decision making happen in different level of agency structure. So what we found out is that it's important that as a sponsor we continuing the communication with the leadership level or HR level, so updating them what's going on and feeding them the resources and information.
Oh, thank you. There's so many good bits of information here that make things easier for people. So I guess the last question that I have for the two of you is there anything else that you could offer in terms of helping people, especially folks at minority serving institutions, to forge partnerships in registered apprenticeships? You both have lots of great expertise and just anything you can think of. And Cindy, I'll ask you.
Yes. So I think being willing to be honest consistently with your partners about what it means to hire an apprentice, what are some of the barriers that they may need to struggle or face in hiring an apprenticeship, whether it be funding opportunities or whether it be maybe just needing to step in into having the manager step into more of a training role sometimes if needed. And I definitely agree with Sam, like you need to communicate with the leadership. You can't just communicate with, whoever will be directly supervising, because turnover is real. Like it happens a lot. And so if the person you were working with decides to leave, then the leaders may not know what it was that you were doing, and may ask you to leave or may terminate the relationship or to reevaluate. And so it's important to have that open and honest communication with not just the supervisor, but also the leadership of the organization. And then I think also in that, sense of honesty is also setting up the expectations for the manager of the apprentices. So sometimes managers may consider apprentices to just be able to just do whatever a regular employee with experience would be able to do. And having an apprentice means that a manager may need to step into the role of training, may need to also have patience in working with the apprentice. But as long as you and the partner, y'all are on the same page, y'all have the same mission regarding what the role of the apprenticeship is, and both believe that this is the best way to promote experience and also economic mobility opportunities, then it pays off when someone that maybe didn't have a lot of access to employment that was meaningful is now gaining all of these skills, and you see that how it's benefiting their family and the communities that they're serving. So yes, just be honest and always communicating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. Sam?
Which that's really important, because we all need to see the same thing to participate in the bigger picture of goal that we are achieving, right? So there's 4 entities in the apprenticeship model. Again, the state, uh, sponsor, employer, and employee. The whatever you're if you are up for the designing your registered apprenticeship, or thinking of it, it is important that you are finding the way to benefiting every entities in those the registered apprenticeship structure. Um, our program is providing, because it's funded by HRSA, we are able to providing our students, historical Black students, to getting a financial support to be a better or specialized social workers in mass level. And also the community agency is benefiting from getting those apprentices, highly trained apprentices. And state is trying to address the lack of master level social workers. So they are benefiting. And, we are our institution is refreshing our syllabi and training opportunity and adopting the new training program. So we gotta find a way that like 4 entities are benefiting each other, and also communicating, setting up the designing the communication, best communication way to, exchange their ideas, and, or accommodating or revising those your own apprenticeship program. So that is very important, I think, that you can think of for the developing the apprenticeship.
Thank you. And I do really appreciate that both of you are so positive about this, because I think it serves as inspiration to other people as they're wanting to do these things. So thank you. Alice, given the work that you've been doing with the Rutgers Center for Minority Serving Institutions related to registered apprenticeship, and for those of you who don't know, Alice has been working on a large research project that we've been doing. I think it would be great if you could share some best practices for partnerships, and I think we are going to share a slide.
Okay, well, I wanted to just first say that we came up with some best practices, but I think Sam and Cindy really, I was taking rapid notes as you were talking, because you came up with some really important ones, which is persistence, patience, believing in the benefit of your program, regular communication, honesty, and setting expectations. And actually, I think that those are just, absolutely fundamental to any good partnership. So thank you for sharing those. Along the same lines, we talked about making sure that your partnerships are beneficial and the resources are distributed fairly. I mean, you don't want to have a partnership where one person is getting all the benefit and the other person feels taken advantage of. You want to make sure that both parties are getting something out of it. And you want to understand the short and long-term goals of the organization that you're partnering with, and how these goals are aligned with your own institution. Because if your long-term goals are really different from your partners, that could lead to some distrust and miscommunication along the way. Being open to new ideas and perspectives as partnerships or opportunities for co-learning and as collaboration. And again, I think a lot of people don't think of partnerships as opportunities to learn from each other. They just see it as opportunities to double their resources or whatever they need to do. But I think, anytime you're working with another institution, there's an opportunity to learn something new and to go into it with that open-minded perspective. And then Sam and Cindy talked a lot about this, having a point of contact at each organization, making sure that everyone's role in the partnership is well defined. And again, the idea that there's tremendous turnover, especially in higher education and in registered apprenticeship. And if these partnerships are going to be sustained over multiple years, you have to plan for those changes in leadership, document the work that you're doing together, and have a transition plan. One of the things we found when we were doing our landscape analysis was some of the programs, had changed leadership, and the people that we reached out to really didn't know much about how the program even got started. So it's really important to, have those records and to, as I said, have a transition plan if you're going to be leaving as the director of something. But in general, as I said, I think Sam and Cindy really said it best. And Mary Beth, you pointed out, in a very optimistic way, in a very positive way. And I think, the bottom line is that level of honesty and, and sharing expectations and, persistence. And you said that beautifully. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alice. I really appreciate all of those great ideas. And that is going to be a wrap for us. So I want to say thank you to JFF, of course, for including us in the summit. And thank you to our staff at the Rutgers Center for Minority Serving Institutions. And most of all, thank you to our great panel. Thanks so much, Cindy and Sam and Alice. Really, really appreciate all of your expertise. And in particular, Cindy and Sam, I just want to say, I know this is really hard work, and I know how committed you are. And just thank you for everything you do. Really, really appreciate you. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Well, I'm excited. Let's get started. Before we start with our panel of partners within South Carolina, I I'll introduce myself. My name is Kirsten Pratt, and I'm the Interim Vice President of Apprenticeship Carolina. Apprenticeship Carolina is a statewide intermediary for the state of South Carolina in regards to fostering partnerships, providing resources and technical assistance to any organization in South Carolina to help with the development as well as the maintenance and maximizing the use of registered apprenticeships for both youth, high school students, as well as adult apprentices. So to get started, we have a great panel today. I want to kick it off by giving it to Eugene. Eugene, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, and a brief overview of BMW's Youth Apprenticeship Rising Scholars Program?
Sure, I would love to do that. I'm Eugene Grant. I'm the operational lead for our vocational talent and training programs here at BMW Manufacturing. We noticed several years ago that for us to continue to be competitive in the global marketplace, we really needed to broaden our reach with looking for young talent. And so we implemented what we call our Rising Scholars Program 2 years ago. And so essentially it's a youth apprenticeship program where we work with rising high school seniors, specifically in mechatronics and automotive currently, to bring in and capture that young talent before some other companies are able to hire them away, because with it being a global environment, everybody's always looking for the best and the brightest. And so to us, that's the one thing that makes us different from all of our competitors. It's the people that work here. And so we think it's extremely important to invest in our people and to do that, just to one, as a community support, but just so we are economically viable and profitable as a business, so that security exists for all of us.
Thank you. Could you also kind of go into a little bit, Eugene, what motivated BMW to develop the Rising Scholars Program specifically, and how does it fall into BMW's plan to create and retain a talented, diverse, and sustainable workforce?
Sure. Yeah, several years ago we put in a strategic plan on how we wanted to start essentially salting or filtering within the education system. And so we wanted to have something at the high school level, something at the middle school level, and something at the elementary school level. So we started at the high school level, and that is where, of course, we implemented our Rising Scholars Program. And so we use that as a segue into our Classic Scholars Program, which is our traditional 2-year apprentice program here at the plant. And so, and in doing so, we saw, as we were doing the recruiting, that we were going to be able to impact our diversity and inclusion numbers and that type of thing as we were visiting and recruiting at all these different high schools. And so because of that, we're now able to have a better representation of what you would find in our local community. And I think that's extremely important, because we are a really large corporation with over 11,000 employees here at our plant. So we are a microcosm of our local community. So anything we can do that, in my opinion, better represents that, just strengthens us as a plant. And so because of that, we were able to improve our numbers, because they are targets out there that, we'd all like to see, to ensure that everybody has a fair opportunity to be able to work and gain, employment and that type of thing. So that was the big thing for us. So it was a way for us to strengthen our makeup of our existing programs. And in doing so, I think we're able to better the economy, better the community itself through the different areas within the community, because with it, we're actually able to target some, I guess what would be Title I schools. And so we can hit some lower socioeconomic areas, as well as, some schools that are primarily filled with minorities. And so it helps us in that respect so we can better reflect what our community holds.
Absolutely. You make a really good point in talking about how your workforce should be reflective of the community that you serve or that you're sitting in and too. So I know that it's actually you all are very strategic in kind of your partners that you work with. And you mentioned the school. So I want to turn it to Lori and Mandy. I guess, Lori, you can go first. Please introduce yourself and describe what your organization's partnership with the Rising Scholars Program, specifically what it looks like in action.
So my name is Lori Hoyer. I am the work-based learning team lead for Greenville County Schools. I have been in this role for about 4 years. Our county represents 16 high schools and 4 career centers. So we have worked with BMW throughout a long period of time with the Tech Scholar program and recruiting our graduating seniors into that. But then again, as Eugene said, over the last 2 years, we have been able to partner with them more closely when it comes to our rising scholars. So those are our seniors that are identified as juniors, actually, the end of their junior year. Eugene and his team go into our schools, our career centers primarily, where we do have mechatronics and automotive tech, and hopefully soon machine tool. And they come in and they do information sessions, and then we do online applications in order for those students to apply for this opportunity, this incredible opportunity. And then Eugene and his team come out to our career centers and they do interviews. And by the end of their junior year, those students that are going to participate in the Rising Scholar program as seniors are then identified and acknowledged. So it's a great process. We work closely with the BMW team to implement what works best for our students, but also what works best for BMW. And that is what our work-based learning team is really all about, is connecting students with these incredible opportunities. The fact that he goes into all of our career centers, all 4 of those, means that he is then targeting students that from all 16 of our high schools. So that is truly representative of what our county looks like. And we can talk more about that as we go on.
And hi, I'm Mandy Elmore. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Curriculum and Instruction at Tri-County Technical College. And we serve Anderson, Oconee, and we serve 3 counties in our state. And so one of the things we're able to do is we've worked with BMW for a while on the Technical Scholars Program and those kinds of things, but we were able to partner because we have a dual enrollment pathway in technical majors specifically. We call it Technical Career Pathways. But again, it allows BMW to recruit representative students from our college's entire service area and to get that diverse demographic and to interact with those students at a younger age and really help them draw the connection between what happens in the classroom, what happens in the lab, and what does this look like at work? What does this look like in real life? And so it's a real opportunity for students to set their trajectory and have exposure in brand new areas across a variety of platforms that are programs, as Lori mentioned. So it's exciting.
Oh, wow, that is nice. I will say too, kind of, you know, it seems to be that you all have a very established relationship. I know Lori mentioned 4 years, and Tri-County, you've been around for years. I don't know the specific amount of time, but let's actually take it back to the beginning, because I know for several folks that may be listening in, they may be more on starting the ground floor, like starting those partnerships. Lori and Mandy, starting with Lori, how did your organization first get involved with the Rising Scholars Program?
Okay, so initially it was through the Tech Scholar program. So really looking at those seniors that had an interest in going into mechatronics after high school, post-secondary, and targeting those students was the initial connection with Greenville County Schools. But then, as Eugene said, and Eugene and I have worked together for many, many years, and it has always been something I think that that they've looked at going down into the secondary level and really capturing, as Eugene said, those students prior to the time that they graduate and getting them involved in BMW and the culture there. So when it came time for the Rising Scholars to be unveiled 2 years ago, we were very excited to partner with them. We've had really a great success with BMW. I think the first year, 50% of those scholars came from Greenville County Schools, and of those, about 13% were female, which again is representative of what we see in our programs. And then last year, I think it was 72%. So we have a really great representation. We partner closely with BMW and feel very fortunate to do just that.
Yes. So it sounds like really taking something that you already have a connection someplace else and really growing from there.
Yes.
What
Yes,
about you? What about you, Mandy?
So with the Rising Scholars program particularly, we kind of had a similar experience. We were building off an existing relationship. But if we look back to how did we make the initial relationship successful, it was really about getting together, talking about what the opportunity was, and seeing the value to students and to BMW and to the institution. And then kind of as we had that shared vision of success, I mean, a commitment to make that vision a reality. Not that we weren't going to face obstacles, but whatever they were, we were going to push through them together. And a real commitment to that makes a big difference in a partnership, to develop that shared vision of where this could go. So.
Thank you, Mandy. That's a really good kickoff to kind of where I was going next as far as, and I'll start with Eugene on this one. What would you say were the specific practices that within this particular partnership that you found most successful when it comes to both recruiting, but also supporting a diverse range of youth apprentices?
Yeah, I think two things really stood out if you want to talk about maybe some best practices. One is because of the partnerships that we have with everyone, we were able to, we had a past president that used to talk about catching fish in the pond. That's kind of how he worded when he was talking about trying to find employees. So by working with our local partners, whether it be at the secondary level or the post-secondary level, we're able to broaden our contact with the number of people that may be interested in coming to work for us. Because I think that's a key piece of it too. We're all singing from the same songbook as far as look what manufacturing has to offer, what it can do to help you, and so to me that was the biggest piece, is the fact that I was able to collaborate with our local partners and partner groups to be able to reach people that normally I personally would have not known how to get to get in front of. And so, and I think that's the key, and that's the that's the biggest thing. And then the other thing too, by working with our partner groups, we're able to leverage. I'm not really sure how to put it, but I think there's an old saying that birds of a feather flock together. I think when you can put people in front of groups of other people that share the same backgrounds as them, the same looks as them, they can see themselves being successful. And so I think that's a key piece of the partnership, is being able to leverage each other's strengths so that we can get the right people talking to the students, and so they can see themselves being successful in it. And I think that's a big key piece. And so, that's one reason why we try to take our existing scholars, apprentices with us when we do recruiting events, so they can see other youth, that's in it, that's being successful, that, that are even already possibly out of the program, but are starting to climb the corporate ladder, because we have several. In fact, we have our very first apprentice graduate that has just been recently promoted to manager. So, you know, that's a big deal. There's only about 60 managers in this whole plant. So, and so, yeah, that's a really big, you know, big accomplishment. And so seeing that people, once you provide them a pathway, you know, at that point they'll thrive and do what's necessary to be successful. So to me, that was probably the biggest two is just one, being able to get in front of different people that I wasn't sure how to reach out to share what we offer. And then the second piece, you know, of course, was having them to help us, so that, you know, we had people that were representative of the different groups that we were trying to talk to, so they could picture themselves and see themselves being successful.
So I'll say one of the things I think is, one, we didn't just limit ourselves to what we've done or existing students or existing populations we already had access to. If we're having an information session, we just don't open it to students that are enrolled in our technical career pathways. We're trying to spread the word, right? Because one, we might can leverage the BMW name, the BMW opportunity, right? That brings some cachet with it, right? A little prestige and all those kinds of things. But the other thing is, we partnered with community-based organizations. We partnered with religious organizations. And worked with the influencers in those communities to make contacts and build relationships, the Hispanic Alliance, in places we didn't have as much access and where we didn't have influence. The other thing is, we looked at this as our responsibility. So if there was an opportunity to offer this technical career pathways in a school or a program where they didn't necessarily have the funds to create a feeder program, we partnered basically to become their program. I provide a faculty member, I provide all the equipment. They help us do the recruiting, manage the logistics of, you know, all the other pieces, but we provide that as a service where maybe there aren't the financial resources in a school or in a community to do those things, because we don't want someone's situation to determine their future, their current situation. We don't want demographics to limit destiny, right? Those are not the same thing, and we have to think about, how do we reach folks who don't hear our standard message, and how do we get our message out in other ways, and how do we help people be successful once they're in our programs?
And I will add to what Eugene said, and one thing that I can say about BMW in particular is that their recruiters and eventually mentors are very diverse across race and gender. And it's nice to see that when they come in to do information sessions, as he said, to bring different age people in there, not just people that have been with BMW for many years, but also females, also across different races. It's an amazing opportunity when you can see those students look at the BMW logo on the shirts and imagine themselves wearing that one day. So kudos to BMW for doing that.
This is a smart group of folks. You've had a lot of success and you've been really intentional, and it shows within like the signing days that we've done, and just the graduations that we've attended, specifically for BMW's apprenticeship programs. I will, before we take it a different direction, I did want to open it up to Lori, Mandy, or Eugene, whoever wants to answer this question. We did talk about successes, but is there anything that you all tried that you'd want to kind of share as, this is a lesson we learned the hard way and learned from our mistakes, that you want to share with the group?
I think, you know, the biggest thing is, I think, if you slow and steady, I guess is the best way to go. I mean, you know, because my personality tends to be, well, let's just try it all and see what, you know, how it goes. And that don't always go so well. But we found that if we have started, you know, like with our Rising Scholar program, we started out with a pilot group. So we started out with 2 upstate counties that we were working with. And now we have opened it up to all of the counties that feed our 4 partner colleges. And so I'm really not sure the exact number of counties that is, but it's probably closer to 20 counties probably total. And we, you know, we're realists. We don't expect, you know, students to necessarily participate from some of our high schools or career technology centers that, you know, are further away. But we do want that opportunity to be there for them, whether they take advantage of it or not. And part of that reason is because we have a lot of people, parents, relatives that do work here, you know. And so I think that helped us, you know, because initially we were going to open it up, and luckily I had, you know, these apprentices are not the only one with mentors, and thank goodness I had a mentor that told me to slow down a little bit and just kind of run a pilot. And so that's what we did, and because of that, we were able to, you know, get through some of the hiccups with the administrative side of the processes and that kind of thing, but getting them, you know, registered and ensuring that we had the right, you know, mentors here that could, you know, could teach and encourage them as they were going along. And I think maybe it's just my naivety or is the fact that there's a few that we've brought in that have found this is not for them. And really, there's nothing wrong with that, you know, but I kind of assumed, you know, well, if they come in, they'll love it and want to stay. Well, they haven't, and that's okay. And so, but what it did do is it provided them an opportunity to do some exploration. And who knows in the future, they may come back, you know, you never know. And even if they don't, and they end up working at one of the other manufacturing companies in the upstate, well, that's a good thing. Because the one other note that I'd made that I wanted to mention, being from this area, growing up in the upstate of South Carolina, I am very proud of the fact that we have a really strong workforce. And so, you know, even though if you look at it, we have over 30 different countries represented at our plant as far as the number of people, different people that work here. But my personal feeling is if I can provide opportunities for our local residents, then that's what we need to do. And so that's one of the other advantages of the partnerships that we've been able to build is provided opportunities for local citizens to be able to gain employment instead of us having to go out and try to recruit it from outside of our area. And so I think that's another big piece of it, is providing those opportunities for local residents. I'll let Mandy or Lori talk about it if they got something else that didn't go so well.
No, I do have some practical application points. I'm thinking that really the debriefing sessions that we've done, both with the Tech Scholar program and now with the Rising Scholar programs, have been extremely helpful in just the collaboration piece. What's worked well, what hasn't worked well, and then doing a pivot and saying this actually, let's try this. BMW's been open to that. Our team has been open to that. And I think that's what makes a great partnership. We've also pivoted when we found out the first year that getting kids to BMW to interview could be logistically difficult. And so BMW has been great about coming into our career centers and interviewing those automotive tech and those mechatronic students right on campus. And so that has really lifted a burden from both the counseling side and also students trying to find transportation there. Additionally, this year we did some student surveys just to find out what their opinion was, how they like it, what things, and we were able to share with Eugene all the great things that are going on and what things they might be able to change a little bit and make it even better for the students. And in the long run, have better retention. So those are 3 practical applications that we've done in our partnership, but I look forward to a long and robust partnership with BMW and Greenville County Schools.
And I would say for us, one of the lessons we learned was, so initially we thought, oh, we're going to get exposure to a different population by reaching into the K-12 arena. Turned out we were just getting the same population earlier. And so that you have to be intentional in those things. And you don't know what you don't know, right? And so Lori talked about the transportation thing, and that's one of the wraparound supports we have worked to provide students with. So if transportation was an issue, there was a vehicle but no gas money, we provide gas cards. If they need to take public transportation, we provide vouchers. So it's just being adaptive to try to understand what are the specific barriers you're facing. And you may not get it right the first time, but again, like Lori and Eugene have both said, you keep iterating on it, right? You're just committed to, okay, pivot, this worked for half the population, but we still have work to do. And so understanding that we're committed to that, and committed to providing equitable access and success, that's an important part of what we do.
Those are fantastic nuggets, I'll call them, as far as lessons learned. And I think kind of the biggest takeaway from that is, really leaning on your partners and trying to learn what the specific needs are for that particular community and who you're working with. So switching gears a little bit, it was mentioned today the positive impact of working with community-based organizations to leverage influence and access as well as support to individuals who may not have heard about the opportunity or may need additional assistance, as has been mentioned before, to access these life-changing opportunities. I've had the pleasure of hearing about the BMW opportunity several times, and really when they recruit, they're recruiting for life. They're really trying to help someone start their career and grow with it. So I'm excited. We have one of our fantastic partners here that represent one of the 3 urban leagues in South Carolina. So I'll turn it over to you, Gail, if you would please introduce yourself and describe your organization as well as the partnership that you have with Apprenticeship Carolina.
Sure, thank you. It was great listening to everyone. I was like scribbling notes from things everyone was saying, and I will get back to that because I love the way that this particular conversation is structured and sort of who's all here, because we really are talking about community, right? And where our community shows up. So certainly I'm Gail Awan, and I'm with the Urban League of the Upstate. I serve as the president and CEO of our Urban League. The Urban League is a national organization which was started in 1910, and there are 92 Urban League affiliates across the country. So here in South Carolina, of course, we have the Urban League of the Upstate, the Midlands, and the Low Country. We've been in the Upstate for just over 50 years, and like all urban leagues historically, we still maintain, our programs are still centered around the same things as they always have been: education, workforce development, health, quality of life, and advocacy for African Americans and other underserved individuals. So that's the work that we do. And certainly, as you just mentioned, our partnership with Apprenticeship Carolina has been this very intentional sort of coming together with all of the urban leagues and saying, how is it that we're going to support this community, particularly in job and career opportunities? Having a career, a job, and the education, we know that that's one of the social determinants of health. That's one of the pathways out of poverty. That's about economic mobility. So that is the conversation that that's the space that we're all in, and we all sort of approach it from our different ways. But we know that, okay, our families show up in our school system, right? They're there. And then they go to our training programs and our technical colleges with the hopes of going to the next place, which is their job or their career opportunity. So I feel like the Urban League, we help guide family, youth, children, whoever that is, through this process to get from where they're starting to where they want to end up and where we all want them to end up. And our particular relationship with BMW has been very extensive and very long, maybe in a different way. But the fact is that we have the relationship with the organization, with the corporation early on. So certainly, in addition to working on the back end, getting our older adults or young adults and adults into career, how are we working with our students? And we do serve at a middle school level, right? But as you just heard, this conversation starts earlier, right? It starts. So BMW has always invested in our STEM initiatives at the middle school where we serve. One of the things, we also have young professionals, a young professional alliance. BMW employees that are people of color are part of our young professionals. That's another mentoring. It's sort of like a getting ready to get ready. When we take our middle school students on a tour through BMW, right? Not only do they get to see this as a place maybe that they want to go, but we could also, as was said, help them identify when we're doing college tours, where's the best place for you to get the support and the education and training you need to get that job at BMW. And one sort of anecdotal is when you take the tour there at BMW, they talk about how they honor sort of and celebrate innovation, right? And you ask employees to sort of think of ways to make the job better. So we did that with our kids, right? We said, okay, you've gone through the tour. Now, if you worked here, did you see anything? What do you think if you worked here would make it better? Because, at BMW, they don't just want you to do the job, right? They want you to be part of the culture and help make this a better place. So like I said, we just want to start those earlier. Very specifically, another way that we have partnered with Apprenticeship Carolina is, as Eugene has talked so much about, is in this diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging space, right? So working with others that have apprenticeship programs, people that are thinking about that, we want those programs to be successful. And they'll only be successful if there's this relationship, if the worker understands what that culture is, and if, as we've heard, the people that are doing the hiring understand what the barriers, what's it going to take to make this be successful. So we try to address that kind of on the front end and provide, as we've heard before, those wraparound services and support.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gail. Gail, I know kind of within our partnership too, you work with BMW, but also several other companies that have built registered apprenticeship programs in South Carolina. Kind of taking it from a broader scope, how would you say that on the employer end and other stakeholders, how can they engage with community-based organizations to diversify registered apprenticeships?
Well, I think that's a great question, and we hear that a lot, right? And I can't find workers. There's so many community-based organizations that represent, whether it's youth or adults. So what's the jobs? What is it that you're looking to fill, right? Not necessarily the specific expertise or skill set now, but it could be around a particular shift, right? Oh, we really need somebody that can work third shift, right? So community-based organization can say, oh, well, we serve people during the day because we're providing them with these kind of services. So they would be great to go into your job training program. Or if you provide incentives, whether it's college tuition, as we just heard, transportation, So what are the things that you provide? Community-based organizations can help you say, here's someone that either has transferable skills. You may not have been thinking about them, but what we know about them is maybe they learn a certain kind of thing really well. We've been working with this mom in this particular shelter environment. We know she learns this kind of thing really well. She's never done this job, but based on what we know about her, she would be great. This is a morning person. Let's just talk about what does it take to be successful with your community-based organizations, and the organizations, the churches, everyone that surrounds those families can help say, okay, this might be sort of a non-traditional funnel for you. I think that's one thing that we can certainly do. And again, we can also help provide those wraparound support services. Again, once they're on the job, if it's a small business, they may say, look, we can't, daycare, we don't have any access or any knowledge about that. Okay. So we can say, look, you like this person is working with you in this area. Let us find those other things that happen in a person's life that maybe stop you from being as successful, right, as you could be on that job. So just really thinking very broadly about what's the job, what kind of person do you want to see in there, and those individuals are out there, but they
Thank
just
you.
may
I think
not
that's
be
very helpful information for our employers and of all sizes, and kind of how to engage with community-based organizations. Flipping it a bit, what would you say, Gail? Share your number one top suggestion to other community-based organizations that may be looking to connect to opportunities such as apprenticeship programs or youth apprenticeship programs like this Rising Scholars Program.
Sure. I think our organizations, we also have to show up where the employers are. Those job fairs, we have to know those, or even if the organization says, well, I don't have a job training program, if part of our mission in our work is to uplift that family, right, to move them from one place to the other, then we kind of need to know what industries are coming to town. We need to be involved in the chamber events. We need to go to those networking events, right, as if we were representing those we serve. Right? We're supposed to be that we can get in the door. And then when we get those business cards, when we hear about that opportunity, or this, the technical college is offering this, so that's our job, is to, sometimes we like to also stay in our comfort zone, right? Our support services, our helping comfort zone. We don't see ourselves as being at maybe, like I said, a chamber event or some networking event. If it's a job fair, if it's a career fair, then we need to show up and be there and introduce ourselves. When you hear about a great company like a BMW that maybe offers all these services and opportunities, then we need that information so we can go back and let those that depend on us and are counting on us, so we can get them ready. Because again, they don't even know what's out there. They don't have the time to be, networking and schmoozing and all these things, right? But that's where community-based organizations, where we want to stand up and show up.
Thank you. So I'm going to throw my last question to close us out to Eugene, and it's a little bit of a challenge, Eugene. Could you please give us a 30-second summation of the importance of this partnership, how this partnership has been to building equitable apprenticeship programs?
Probably not in 30 seconds, but I'll do my best. I think the key is that we all bring to the table our own sets of strengths. And I think by creating the partnership, the summation of the group is so much bigger than the individuals. And because of that, we're able to, to raise the level of each of our groups and organizations. And it's because of that then we're able to cast a much bigger net to our local, community when we're trying to reach out and provide opportunities. Because really, that's what all of us are trying to do. We're just trying to, the people we tend to serve, we're trying to show them the opportunities that exist. And I think that's the biggest thing out of the partnership. We're able to leverage each other's resources so we get a much bigger bang for the buck. And this is why I said I didn't think I could do it in 30 seconds. One thing that was with Gail's group, I guess it was 2 years ago, I believe the Urban League of the Upstate was celebrating an anniversary event or something. And we had the privilege of helping put together some displays that showed the timeline of the organization. And so that's what we had our apprentices do. And so as one of their activities. And the comments that came back from the apprentices that were working on the project, and I say that because majority of these apprentices were white males, and they were getting to learn about some of our local African American leaders that had happened over the past 50 years. And I go back to that statement that education, levels the playing field. So, ignorance is bliss, but as you learn more and more about the people you work with and the people in your community, and so it started changing their whole views, because everybody, you only know what you know. Back to Mandy's point, you don't know what you don't know. And so just by saying, yeah, we'd be happy to support them in creating some displays, turned into a wonderful learning opportunity for our apprentices. That wasn't planned, it wasn't scheduled, but that's the power of partnerships. You're able to take advantage of teachable moments like that make us all better.
Well,
I just have to add to that.
Yeah.
I have to add to that.
Go ahead,
because
Kale.
You're absolutely right. Those displays, that was our 50th anniversary. It's hanging in our building right now. But to have that group here going through all those archive items, right? To have our youth people walking through, seeing this partnership, and to make it even better, we had the president of the National Urban League come down, right, and saw this display. And then there is a plaque hanging right there that says all the names of those BMW folks that donated and contribute their time, right? That is a true win-win for everyone. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yes, you both knocked it out of the park. So I will wrap us up and thank each of you all for such a lively discussion on a very, very important topic to us at Apprenticeship Carolina and all of those that we work with. It's our hope that each member of the audience gains 5 key takeaways to building a culture of belonging. It should be on the screen there, but I'll kind of walk through it just to drive the point home. First is really seeking out, following up with, and creating apprenticeship champions within the employers, within any education and training providers, community-based organizations, and intermediaries. It really does take a village of self-motivated individuals to creatively address the needs within this work. 2, I would say, is you want to strive to have your workforce reflective of your local community demographics. Your efforts and practices are proving to be correct when this reflection occurs, and collaboration with diverse stakeholders really makes this possible. 3rd, I would say, is remember, education providers and community organizations, they understand the needs of and provide additional supports to potential apprentice candidates. So don't try to do everything alone. It's really a team effort. And leading to our next takeaway is the importance of building partnerships to allow apprentices to have multiple avenues for supports. I think a couple of our panelists today offer some of the same supports, but is leveraging those resources, as Eugene said, to be able to provide support needed on the job, within the classroom, and any logistical things for mental and physical needs. 4th, intentionally select and prepare mentors to impact inclusion and apprentice support. We heard today just how important the mentor role is to apprenticeship, and the intentional reflection of, okay, this person's from the same background as me, this person looks the same as me, so I can do this too, or I feel comfortable, you know, in that learning space that I'm in. And as Gail mentioned it in closing, equitable registered apprenticeship opportunities is a win for employers, a win for the community, and a win for that student or employee. So following up an intention with building partnerships makes this possible. I'll close out today by saying thank you so much for taking the time to hear more about the collaborative partnerships Apprenticeship Carolina fosters between who we have on our panel today, Urban League of the Upstate, BMW, Tri-County Technical College, and Greenville County Schools. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Hoff with the Institute for Community Inclusion at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. I am the facilitator for this session on partnerships supporting people with disabilities in registered apprenticeship programs. The Institute for Community Inclusion, or ICI, where I work, is a partner in JFF's National Innovation Hub for DEIA and registered apprenticeships. So we have a great panel who's going to participate in this discussion. So I'm just going to call on each panelist to kind of quick introduction, who you are and your involvement with registered apprenticeships. So I'll start with Amanda Muller.
Good morning. My name is Amanda Muller. I'm the Apprenticeship Navigator for Bureau of Rehabilitation Services in Maine, and my role is made possible by the State Apprenticeship Expansion, Equity, and Inclusion Grant, and is dedicated to promoting inclusion of individuals with disabilities in registered apprenticeship programs for the state of Maine.
Great, thank you. Next, Kim.
Good morning. My name is Kim G, and I'm the director of the Pre-Employment Transition Services Program with the University of Missouri. And we have pre-ET specialists located all around the state, and we work with students whose vocational goals may be to access apprenticeships to help them achieve their career goals. Happy to be here.
Great, thank you, Kim. Wendy.
Hello, my name is Wendy Kostenbatter, and I am the program manager for the Maine Apprenticeship Program within the Maine Department of Labor. And my role is to help with my team and Amanda create registered apprenticeship for all people of Maine. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. And then Jay.
Oh, thank you, David. My name is Jay Gibbs. I work for the Institute for Community Inclusion, UMass Boston as well. My current position is DSP Apprenticeship Manager here in Missouri. Prior to that, had experience in community living and employment services where apprenticeship was an active part of our employment offerings. I am also a subject matter expert on apprenticeship development for Project Neon. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Jay. And then Tim.
Good morning. My name is Tim Small, and I am a vocational consultant for the Bureau of Rehab Services in the state of Maine, and was on the original apprenticeship group for the state of Maine. My job consists of working on all sorts of different projects in all sorts of different areas, so I wear many hats, but happy to be here.
Great. Okay. Thank you all. And it's it's great to have two different states represented and people in two different roles. So so hopefully be an interesting discussion. So maybe I'll start out, and actually this question I'll start with Jay, and then for this one, how did you in your role decide upon registered apprenticeship as an employment strategy in your role as a community, in your case, a community provider for people with disabilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we started our employment practice, we started from the ground up, and what our initial focus was finding a niche that no other employment provider was in, and also a niche that would be really attractive to employers. So apprenticeship, what we found, it really was a great platform for training the individuals. It really is a situation where learning expectations happens through work-based learning. It requires a really close partnering relationship with the employer. So the employer has a really vested interest in the success of the program as well as the success of the candidate. So.
And I would say, somebody who also works in the disability space, the highly structured nature of apprenticeships really can be helpful in terms of how to support folks to not only get jobs but have a successful career pathway. So, so same question, similar question for I don't know, Amanda or Tim want to take this, but essentially, how did Maine Voc Rehab decide on the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services decide on apprenticeship as an approach to helping people become employed?
So I can take the first piece anyway, and that is in 2019, Maine Bureau of Rehab Services had been having discussions about apprenticeship and looking at the needs of our clients and the fact that it was potentially a good avenue for opportunities and for further career pathways for our clients. We had met with the Workforce Innovation Technical Assistance Center, known as WinTech at the time, and in discussions with them, they were able to connect us with a few other states that had pretty robust apprenticeship programs. And they were kind enough to share their policies and practices and procedures.
Mhm.
And then really we began a collaborative with the Bureau of Rehab Services, the Bureau of Employment Services, the Maine Apprenticeship Program, to really look at, you know, how we could really expand apprenticeship and how we were going to approach apprenticeship. So that was kind of the initial steps. So it was a lot of coordination and communication.
And learning from those who had at least had some success, which is really, really important.
Very so.
Yeah. And so I question, I don't know if you have anything to add there, Amanda, on that?
Yeah, so just, to add to what you said, David, and what Jay said, apprenticeship, we knew it would fit well for people who thrive in a structured and mentored environment because you do know ahead of time, what skills you'll be learning and what tasks you're expected to perform on the job. You know the starting wages and each incremental wage increase. So knowing what to expect is important for individuals with disabilities, especially if they need to make special arrangements or accommodations for work.
And I think I would add, if the audience is not aware, that individuals with disabilities, or current data, about 40% of working age adults with disabilities participate in the labor force, and that's closer to I think it's 77% for people without disabilities. So there's a major need to use strategies to increase the workforce participation of people with disabilities. And in those with more significant disabilities, the numbers are even more challenging. So anything we can do, and using existing ways of people moving forward on career pathways is just really, that's why this is also critically important. So Wendy, what's your role in the Maine effort? What's your role as a partner? Wendy, did you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay,
Yep.
very good. Our role is pretty extensive. We've been excited to offer 14 grantees of the opera funding within the state, and those are our focus partners at this time. We've also been able to partner with the Maine Vocational Rehabilitation and Division for the Blind and Visually Impaired, the Bureau of Employment Services, and as Tim mentioned, WinTech. Many other states have partnered with us as well to grow our knowledge in registered apprenticeship. And one of our larger partners here in the state is Hospitality Maine. We were granted the American Rescue Plan Act funds to help expand apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship opportunities. These funds were awarded to 14 recipients who were working either intermediaries or individual sponsors of apprenticeship. So hiring apprentices with disabilities and partnering with BRS is an exception of their contract with us. It is an expectation of them. We have an aspirational goal of 7% of apprentices with disabilities. With their partnerships, we've been able to get closer to that goal and deliver.
So so there's been partners and just within Maine with the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services, with Maine Vocational Rehabilitation, but with an employer association, with external entities, sometimes in other states, or national technical assistance centers to provide guidance. So each has a different role, but those partnerships are all really critically important in terms of moving forward on this. Okay, great. How about you, Kim? What, in terms of your role in apprenticeship in Missouri and partnering?
Well, my direct role with apprenticeship was probably prior to my involvement with the University of Missouri when I was with vocational rehabilitation. Now I can't speak for them because I retired from Voc Rehab in 2021. But when I was there, I actually worked with Jay Gibbs because he brought an idea to Voc Rehab at that time about apprenticeships for individuals with disabilities. And I tell you, it was such a neat concept, but it was a challenge, I think, for us because we hadn't done anything like that before. So I think we reached out to Maine because they were doing it before we were to talk about how they were doing it and make sure that was something we could actually do under the Voc Rehab grant. But what was really neat about it was that for those individuals who needed a hands-on approach, who maybe had not been successful in an academic setting in the past, it really was an opportunity or a way for them to be successful, maybe for the very first time in their vocational goals or in their careers. And then it also provided that incentive for them because they were able to get those incremental pay increases along the way. So it made them want to keep going as well, while they also had the supports of the apprenticeship or the from Voc Rehab through the job coaching or whatever. So that was kind of how I first became involved with apprenticeships. And now through our program, we are huge supporters. So when we are out there speaking with young people, talking to students in high schools, apprenticeship is one of those things that we talk to them about because not everyone wants to incur college debt, but they do want a good job where they can support themselves in the future.
So I know that you are working now on what's called pre-employment transition services, which is a service provided by public vocational rehabilitation agencies nationally. For those who aren't familiar with that, that's actually a relatively new service under the WIOA, passed in 2014. In terms of apprenticeship, what's been the role of as we call pre-ETs in our field? What's been the role of pre-ETs? Anything beyond sort of just creating awareness of that? I mean, I know there's been some talk out there in the world, at least conceptually, well, maybe a pre-employment transition service could almost be a pre-apprenticeship program as well. There's some probably parallels there.
One of the things that we have done is as we have tried to make sure our pre-ET specialists are educated about apprenticeships. We've invited a lot of folks in to talk to us about the opportunities that are available in Missouri and the types of apprenticeships that are out there. So as our specialists are working with students to explore their career interests, and if they mention a career that we know is an apprenticed career in particular, then we take them to those websites and help them look at what opportunities are out there. We try to set up informational interviews and job shadows and help them begin to make those connections with apprenticeship opportunities before they even graduate from high school.
Yeah, great.
So that's been our role, and we're very excited about it. In fact, we have a student now who's a freshman in high school who wants to be a direct support professional, which is an apprenticed program or position here in Missouri, and we've already begun making those connections for her.
So, I mean, one thing I'm taking away from this is I think that those who are working on pre-employment transition services within Voc Rehab need to have a better understanding of apprenticeship. I always see apprenticeship, it's like that long list of, work-based learning, but it's like, no, it's got to be more than just on the list. But I think understanding it, having the connections with the apprenticeship programs, understanding the apprenticeable positions and all that, really critically important to that. This is a more general question for anybody to pick up on. In terms of the partnerships you've had, what do you see as some of the more critical pieces of that? I mean, who have been the important partners? What have you seen as most critical in making those partnerships work? And I don't know who wants to jump on that, or anybody that resonate with anybody. Jay, go ahead, and then others.
I'll kick it off and then I'll throw it out to the group. But, every person who spoke so far is talking about collaboration and partnering and how important that is. And that is the one thing. I mean, the program that we developed here in Missouri, it would have never happened without vocational rehabilitation. It would not have happened without workforce development. It would not have happened without DOL, Office of Apprenticeship. Those core partnerships that we had are what allowed us to take that creative idea like, hey, nobody's done it before, but this is really cool. It's a great learning platform. It creates routines. There's that opportunity to not only get the mentorship through the job coach, but then actually train the natural supports within the company to help the longevity of this individual. So, it's the employer, it's the VR, it's the behavioral or Department of Mental Health, it's the Office of Apprenticeship, local workforce boards, but then it gets into the pre-ed side of things. It's the high schools, it's the technical colleges, as well as some of the other local organizations. And creating those tight bonds is what will help drive that initiative forward.
Yep. Other thoughts on this and how these partnerships have been effective and what they've assisted with?
So,
Yeah.
so this is Tim, and I would just kind of repeat what Jay had said, and that is, working with leadership from the Bureau of Rehab Services, through Bureau of Employment Services, the Maine Apprenticeship Program, um, really looking at other states. So we had a lot of collaboration with Pennsylvania and Iowa and Vermont, um, who had been pretty successful at implementing apprenticeship into their programs. And, um, as we know, um, when you're working for a state agency, there's always, those policies and procedures, and it can be quite cumbersome. And I see Kim smiling, but so there were all those details to work out as well. So states shared with us, their policies and procedures and how they did things. And so again, it really was a collaboration for all those people who were working with individuals with disabilities in the state of Maine and outside of the state. And it really came down to having lots of meeting, lots of phone calls, and, you know, communicate, ask lots of questions, because there was a lot that we didn't know initially.
Mhm. Other thoughts on this general? Amanda, you have a comment?
Yeah, just to add on to what Tim said, so our partnerships with the 14 grant recipients who are sponsors and intermediary sponsors it's just um, been astronomical in getting our program on the ground and expanding those programs. So we're working closely with them, and we've got a pretty effective partnership with them. We're um, I'm sort of like a liaison between the Maine Apprenticeship Program and Bureau of Rehab Services. So I'm connecting um, the Maine Apprenticeship Program with uh, getting advice and information to sort of uh, work on improving those outcomes, and meeting with the grantees to talk about how DVR can support their recruitment needs, and they've been pretty open and engaging in those conversations. So part of my role is also to communicate with the voc rehab counselors to inform them of apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship opportunities. And so part of what I've done is to help the Maine Apprenticeship Program to alter some of the language on their disability self-disclosure form,
Okay.
which we're working on to we've already started using that. So I think that's going to be helpful in tracking the number of individuals with disabilities in apprenticeship. And um, we're continuing to work with our sponsors um, to be more inclusive. And I think it's pretty effective.
But I mean, I think there's a few takeaways I'm hearing here. One is that disability entities like a voc rehab agency or disability service provider, whoever, I mean, they can provide help in terms of recruitment of individuals, identifying individuals. They can provide assistance, and I love hearing that, just taking a larger look at, okay, what are you doing now? How are you currently structured? How is the sponsor doing recruitment? What language are they using? All of those things. So it's more than just working on specific individuals, but how can you generally create a culture that is more inclusive? I know others' thoughts about, again, just general strategies for partnership, or even some of those specific roles and how to make apprenticeship more inclusive through partnership, or what you've been doing.
I think one of the things Tim mentioned, and Jay, of course, as well, that collaboration is important, but you can't overemphasize that communication piece, because without that, everything falls apart. So I think that it's impossible to communicate too much. And the other thing is that you almost have to find a champion within your organization to help drive it forward, or more than one champion, preferably, because you have to have somebody, as Amanda said, who is kind of driving that bus and helping to change that thought process of, here's the language to use, even down to changing the forms. Here's the wording for your form, all of that, to make it easy for somebody else to think, oh, apprenticeship is just the natural vocational goal for this person, or this is the way to help educate this particular client on, what their options are, or whatever the case might be. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Other thoughts on this? I do think a few things. Number one, and I think this is true of partnerships in general, you have different systems, and I've seen this in the work that I'm doing in apprenticeship. You have different systems working with each other. Don't presume anything. They don't know. I mean, I've learned so much working with apprenticeship programs. It's a different language, RTI, what the heck is that? DAS, whatever it might be, OA. That is all. I had to learn the acronyms, but it goes both ways, when I start talking VR, it's like, what are you talking about, this and that, or even like accommodation, all these terms that we all use. So part of it is just taking the time to learn about each other and what you do, and how you do it, and really respecting that's going to take some time. What mechanisms are you using? Because you talked a lot about communication. What mechanisms specifically are you using? Has it been just meeting regularly? Has it been like having, just through email, through just, regular project meetings? Has it been just, making yourselves readily available? I mean, I'm also curious, even if you're using things like online messaging, or using Teams or things like that to sort of organize yourselves. I do think sometimes people are curious about how are you actually communicating, because everybody say, yeah, we communicate, but what mechanisms are you using? I don't know. Maybe Wendy, I don't know, from your perspective, what have you been using in terms of that?
I think I can speak for all of us that we've worn out the platform of Teams and Zoom. That's been an easy go-to for all of us to connect and have those vital conversations. I know for our team here in Maine, we do use those virtual connections. We use email. We meet with our people. One of the things that we have learned is that people want somebody to talk to. They want that connection. They want that personal touch. So we try very, very hard to make sure that they have a connection via whatever mode they need to reach out to either the Maine Apprenticeship Program or VR or whatever their need is for that time.
Others thoughts on this? I mean, in Missouri, what have you been using in terms of mechanisms for ongoing communication? Or
Yeah, I have a background in business, so for me, it is that face-to-face. It's that opportunity to really build that relationship, and maybe that's where Wendy was going with that comment, because I agreed with everything that you said, Wendy. But what I found is the face-to-face, building that relationship, whether it's with the employer, whether it's with the guardian, whether it's with the individual, vocational rehabilitation. And, for me, sometimes it was, hey, I need to hop in the car, drive 2.5 hours and meet face to face, because it's like, what's going on? Where are we at? You have to be able to do that. So Team and Zoom, all that stuff works really well, but building those relationships, it takes a broad range of exactly what we're talking about, all different media forms. But I can't express enough what Kim said earlier, is having not only a champion who's going to drive it, whether that's Tim, whether that's Amanda, or myself in a previous life inside the organization, but then also having a champion within the employer. Because if you don't have a champion with that employer, then it's going to become more or less a regulated program that they run, and they have a choice. Do we keep doing it? Do we not keep doing it? And so building those relationships so that they do have one point of contact and just say, you know, hey, Wendy, hey, Jay, hey, Amanda, hey, Tim, what's going on? You know, we had this went down the other day. What do we do with it? That's where that relationship can really create that learning curve and that opportunity, because apprenticeship for a lot of employers, this is about education, and education takes time until they understand exactly what their role is and how they can make this a recurring benefit long term for their organization.
Other thoughts on this? Instead of, yeah,
This is
go ahead,
Amanda.
Amanda. Yeah, go ahead, Amanda. Yeah.
So my role's a little unique. So I'm frequently communicating with VR counselors, and I will often go to their staff meetings, and sometimes I'll present on updates to apprenticeship. I usually will just give a few tidbits of information on new updates, or if there's a lot of information, I'll do a whole presentation, and then just make myself available to meet with those counselors, and they always have a lot of questions, and that's really effective to get them to start contacting me to ask about apprenticeship, to ask about their clients and how they could be matched with an apprenticeship program. So I think that's been really helpful.
What this is probably more for the folks who are immersed in disability work. Who are some of the partners that if I'm a sponsor or an apprenticeship program or a state apprenticeship office or whatever, who are some of the disability organizations that should be connected with? One's obvious, public vocational rehabilitation. There's one in every state, so that's a starting point. But others that you think of.
So this is Tim. So, you know, we have some well-established partners that we work with, whether someone is looking at apprenticeship or some other type of employment. And that might be the Office of Aging and Disability Services, which would provide those long-term support services. So long-term job coaching, they might provide long-term transportation. And so that's a real big, it's not just, you know, it's another agency that we work with, but it's a really important connection, connecting with any of those agencies that we contract with to do job coaching, to make sure that they really understand the apprenticeship model. And I would also say we work a lot with, you know, those agencies that provide supportive services to our clients, such as case managers, you know, because if you don't approach it holistically, the client isn't possibly going to be as successful as they could be.
Are there other examples that people have of disability entities?
Well, I can throw a few out there, and this may be indirect in terms of what your question is, David, but I think there's value in it, in that when you go into apprenticeship, there's that ability to access other areas that we wouldn't typically think about, like AARP. So these folks are 55 plus. So not only can you potentially access, individuals at that age with disability who are looking for work, utilizing the AARP platform to come through. But then you can collaborate with them to bring them in. But also, it can be a source for job coaches. It can be a source for a lot of other things. And that really is the same, at least here in Missouri. We have a very active workforce development boards in all of the communities, as well as statewide. That also opens a lot of access to underserved populations. It also opens, the door for potential braiding of funding. They have access to WIOA dollars in multiple different categories. I think those are exceedingly valuable relationships to have where you can collaborate, whether it's pre-apprenticeship or direct apprenticeship opportunities.
I would say also, I mean, just to summarize, I mean, every state has an agency that focuses on individuals with mental health issues. Every state has an agency that focuses on individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities. So Tim was talking about, which have a often long-term support funding available for folks, particularly those who might need job coaches or just some kind of long-term counseling or whatever. I think your point about the case management is also really important. Much like every world, the disability world is complex with lots of different entities, public agencies, private service providers, advocacy groups, independent living centers. All of those are, and I think it's, again, part of partnership between the world of apprenticeship and the world of disability is kind of really understanding how they operate and all these different entities that are out there that can assist in various ways. I also want to mention, I think it's a critically important, some of the work we're doing here in Massachusetts is trying to better connect with the transition programs in schools, transition for individuals who are transitioning from school to adulthood and into employment, and figuring out how we can, you talked about that a little bit, Kim, about in the work you're doing, but how can we create better awareness for apprenticeship, but even use those final years when somebody is still, in some cases, individuals with disabilities stay in school through the age of 22. Can we use those final years to really get them into an apprenticeship or a pre-apprenticeship, et cetera, et cetera? So I think the transition programs are really important as well. Other thoughts on this kind of partnerships and different entities to partner with that we haven't touched on yet? If not, we can move on to the next question. I guess, and these are more specific to Voc Rehab, but what are the things that you feel like partners and employers don't know about public vocational rehabilitation? So this is probably an Amanda, Tim, or Kim question for all of you.
Yeah. Did you want to go first, Amanda?
Yeah, I can take that. Our partners tend to have a limited or a vague understanding of what VR services are, and a lot of employers don't even know that VR exists at all. So helping our partners and the employers understand what VR is and that DVR supports individuals with disabilities who are in any stage in their journey of employment, preparing for, finding, entering, retaining, and advancing in employment. And I think something that they don't realize is that it's integrated employment only. They tend to not realize that VR can provide almost any service to assist individuals in employment. And I think what's probably the biggest secret is that we love to work directly with employers to help them address their concerns and to support their employees with disabilities. So I do think that it's essential that they understand that VR job seekers are vetted and that their employment goals are supported by their VR counselors, and they go through this thorough assessment and careful consideration of their employment goals, and they go through job readiness training, and knowing the extent of the guidance and counseling that the VR counselors provide is important. And I'm in a unique role because I have a background as a VR counselor, so I am able to communicate with those employers on what services are that VR is able to provide, and I am able to communicate, the how important it is that they consider, hiring individuals with disabilities and helping to dispel those myths as well.
And so I would just add, this is Tim, that um, at least in the state of Maine, on any given day, we're working with approximately 5,000 individuals who are looking for employment. So if you'd like to say we're the largest employment agency, probably, we are. And I think that there are a number of pieces in it, especially about it may be kind of the stereotypes and myths and the bias about hiring individuals with disabilities. Um, and those are typically those physical, it's somebody who's in a wheelchair, it's someone who's blind or visually impaired. Um, and so when you say that word disability, businesses tend to think high need, expensive accommodations, which is not the case. Most accommodations, $50 to $500 usually is what it will take to set somebody up successfully. The other piece is I think sometimes there's also a stereotype about apprenticeship. In the apprenticeship jobs that we know is that, okay, it's going to be a welder, it's going to be construction. And businesses don't understand that there are, most jobs, out there can be apprenticeable. So there's kind of a misunderstanding about the word apprenticeship and what it really means. The other piece is I think that um, when anyone discusses VR, and as we said earlier, there's lots of acronyms out there,
Mhm.
BRS, VR, DBVI. I mean, and so that can be confusing, and we use a lot of acronyms and forget sometimes. But I think there's another piece is that VR serves dual clients, and those dual clients are businesses and they are individuals with disabilities in trying to connect them. And so when anyone talks about the Bureau of Rehab Services, um, they think just about our clients, not necessarily that we partner with and have relationships with lots of businesses. Um, and then just the word rehab itself sometimes has a very negative connotation because individuals think rehab as having to do um, not with function, but with inability. And so if we had just said we're the main employment agency, I think that might just be easier. But
Yeah.
so there's a lot of stereotypes out there that need to, be addressed.
Yeah. It's interesting. Ohio, for example, rebranded their agency. They're called Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. That's the name of their voc rehab agency. So I think.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that voc rehab question? Yes, Wendy.
I think one of the things I wanted to expand upon with Tim, he mentioned the employers with the apprenticeship program. And I can't speak for all apprenticeship programs, but in Maine, one of the things that we recognized was that employers, to dispel the myth of apprenticeship, um, were burdened by the paperwork and by what this really means, what an apprenticeship means to them, and how it can be a positive outcome instead of the burden that exists in front of them. So we made it very easy for them. We started holding their hand and saying, let us guide you through this. The paperwork is really not that daunting. So we've streamlined that. And as our program has grown, we have more and more people that help the employers of Maine to see the ease of that. And we've been very, very successful with that process and streamlining it to their successes.
As we get towards wrapping up, Tim, do you want to comment briefly on just windmills training and how you've used that?
Certainly, yes, love to. So windmills is really it's a 12 session program that the focus is mainly on businesses and changing the perception of ability. And it really addresses an employer's their thoughts, their ideas, kind of myth busting breaking stereotypes. The end result is that people come away from this training really looking at their own thoughts, and that some of those ideas and thoughts are incorrect, and actually how they go about hiring, about inclusion. There's discussions about accommodations. So, and really there are a lot of resources that we connect them to. So the Job Accommodation Network, resources that they can look at to answer those questions that um, they think are insurmountable, or that it can't be done. Um, and it's the outcomes that we've seen, especially in some of our grantees, which have been colleges and schools, have been that we are well versed in providing services to students that maybe have disabilities, to their parents, and but we have never ever really taken a look at our own attitudes, beliefs, and our own hiring processes. Um, and so I think some of those businesses have been really impacted because we went in and you could tell it. I mean, they know a lot about disability, but it was very textbook. And uh, by the end of those sessions, you know, they were really asking themselves some really hard questions, like, are our applications accessible? Are the questions that we're asking in interviews, are they culturally sensitive? It just brings about an awareness that there really is implicit bias, and it addresses that in a very nice way. Um, and so I would recommend it's nationwide. Every state has it. I'm a trainer, and Maine VR is providing it for free, to and it's been required actually of all the grantees, which is, I think, probably the first um, y- you know time that it has been mandated. So I would encourage anyone to look up their website, and if you haven't taken it, to participate.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you all. Thank you to all our panelists. That went very quickly, but appreciate all your input and comments. And really, this is really helpful in terms of understanding, the critical importance of partnerships within advancing the participation of people with disabilities in apprenticeships. So, okay, so as we wrap up here, we have a few points we want to share about best practices in terms of disability partnership. Um, First off, as we mentioned, it's really important to understand the disability partnership landscape. So if you're a sponsor or an employer or some related technical instruction provider, whoever it might be, understanding what vocational rehabilitation is, VR, other public agencies, as we mentioned, agencies that support individuals with mental health issues, developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities, those exist in every state. Also, a large network of community providers that exist in every state, typically nonprofit agencies that help people with disabilities with their employment and other day-to-day needs, schools, transition programs, technical assistance entities, so entities that can provide guidance and or experts on various disabilities issues. Also, have partners that can assist and guide with disability-specific issues, things like recruitment, which we spoke about, accommodations, disclosure, support during apprenticeship, not only on an individual basis, but also on a more global basis, as we discussed, helping to sort of look at your apprenticeship program or your role as an employer and say, okay, how can we create an environment that is more inclusive of people with disabilities? What changes can we make in our recruitment processes or application processes, et cetera, et cetera. Also, just in general, as we talked about, practicing the basics of good partnership. really clear roles about each partner, good communication. We talked a lot about that and can't emphasize that enough, having good mechanisms for communicating on an ongoing basis. And then you have to also allow opportunities for relationships to develop over time. When you start to partner, you need to get to know each other, to understand each other, and how to work together. It's not going to happen overnight. So, and using these best practices can really be helpful in advancing the inclusion of people with disabilities in registered apprenticeship programs. So thank you so much to all the attendees for being with us today, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much to CMSI, ICI, Apprenticeship Carolina, and all of your great panelists today. I appreciate your willingness to share such great information and your afternoon with us. I also want to thank my fantastic team here at JFF for their tireless work in creating equitable registered apprenticeship programs. Today's session was nothing short of fantastic. Even I learned new information today about how these partners built and continue to build strong partnerships and relationships. One thing is for sure, we cannot do this work alone in the apprenticeship community. We must continue to seek out, follow up with, and create apprenticeship champions within employers, education providers, community organizations, and intermediaries, while striving to have our workforce reflective of our local community demographics. As a part of that learning and growing, we must also continue to practice the basics of good partnerships, such as having clearly defined roles, making sure that good communication is at the forefront, and lastly, opportunities for the relationships to develop over time. I hope that all of your questions were answered this afternoon. Something you can begin doing today. Create a listening session in your organization, thinking and talking about your needs internally, and begin seeking out those in your community that can help to address those needs, while also utilizing JFF in those conversations where needed. JFF's Innovation Hub stands ready to assist your organization in establishing or achieving your DEIA goals utilizing the Registered Apprenticeship Model. Here is your call to action. We have many resources to access and can provide free, no-cost technical assistance in building equitable registered apprenticeship programs. Two JFF and partner-designed resources that immediately come to mind are the DEIA Program Design Framework and its elements, which are supported by strong external partnerships to be successful, and our recently released mentorship course, which defines effective mentoring and addresses systemic and structural barriers to equitable economic opportunity by providing you with a clear structure on how to make equity part of your mentorship practice. There are also two links that are being shared in the chat. One is our websites to access the many additional resources available, and the other is to apply for technical assistance with JFF and its partners. Also, be on the lookout for upcoming virtual technical assistance sessions being scheduled for the fall of 2023 and the spring of 2024. We look forward to hearing from you. As I close, in the great words of a very good friend of mine and former Wisconsin Apprenticeship State Director Karen Morgan, there are wood ships and good ships, and ships that sail the sea. But the best ships are apprenticeships, and may they always be. Have a great rest of the day.